A police officer pulled over a black man, thinking he had everything under control. But when he opened the briefcase and saw a document that threatened to end his career, everything changed in an instant. Subscribe to the channel and don't forget to leave a comment where you're watching this story from. The night air was thick with the smell of rain-soaked asphalt, and the faint hum of distant traffic was the only sound accompanying Marcus as he navigated his way home. His car's windshield wipers moved rhythmically, struggling to keep up with the persistent drizzle. The streetlights along the suburban road cast long, distorted reflections on the wet pavement, their glow a faint comfort in the otherwise dark night. Marcus's day had been draining, the kind of day where every task demanded more effort than it should, leaving his mind a foggy mess. All he wanted now was to collapse into the quiet sanctuary of his home, maybe sip on a hot cup of tea and let the stress of the world melt away. But as he glanced in the rearview mirror, the familiar red and blue flashing lights pierced through the night, jolting him from his thoughts. He sighed deeply. Here we go again, he thought. Marcus knew the drill, had lived it too many times before. Hands at 10 and 2, voice steady, movements slow. He checked his speedometer instinctively. 32 miles per hour, well within the limit. His tail lights were fine, his registration up to date. There was no reason for this stop, except one. Marcus pulled over to the side of the road, careful to make his intentions clear with a deliberate turn signal. He parked, turned off the engine, and rolled down his window. The cold, damp air rushed in, bringing with it a sense of unease that settled in his chest. He didn't need to look in the mirror to know what kind of night this was about to be. He'd seen it too many times. The slow walk, the heavy boots crunching against the wet pavement, the commanding presence of someone who believed the badge made him untouchable. "License and registration," barked the officer before Marcus could even say good evening. The voice was sharp, clipped, with no room for civility. Marcus turned his head and saw the man standing by his window, tall, broad-shouldered, and wearing a smirk that screamed arrogance. The name tag on his chest read, Hill. Marcus kept his movements slow, methodical. "Good evening, officer," he said, his voice calm but firm. "Can I ask why I was stopped?" "You were driving suspiciously slow," Officer Hill replied, narrowing his eyes as if daring Marcus to challenge him. Marcus blinked. Suspiciously slow, he wanted to laugh at the absurdity of it, but he knew better. "It's raining," he said evenly, gesturing toward the windshield. "I'm just being careful." Hill leaned closer, his face illuminated by the glow of the dashboard. Water dripped off the brim of his hat, landing with soft plinks on the car door. "Careful, huh?" he said, his tone dripping with condescension. "You hiding something in here, pal?" There it was, the word. Not sir, not mister, but pal, delivered with enough disdain to fill the space between them. Marcus suppressed the flash of anger rising in his chest. He'd been here before, and reacting now would only escalate things. "Officer, I have nothing to hide," Marcus said, keeping his tone measured. He reached, slowly, for the glove compartment, pulling out his registration, then handed it over along with his license. Hill snatched the papers without a word, his eyes scanning them with a cursory glance before retreating to his cruiser. Marcus watched him in the side mirror, his jaw tightening. Something about Hill's body language screamed trouble. He could see the man fiddling with his radio, looking over his shoulder as if expecting backup. Rain pattered softly against the roof of the car, the rhythmic sound doing little to soothe Marcus's growing unease. When Hill returned, His expression was a mask of irritation. He shoved the documents back into Marcus's hands with an air of annoyance. "Step out of the vehicle," he ordered. Marcus frowned. "What's the reason, officer? I've done nothing wrong." Hill's eyes narrowed, and his tone turned icy. "Step out of the vehicle." Marcus sighed, his breath fogging in the cool night air. He unbuckled his seatbelt and opened the door, stepping into the drizzle. The cold dampness seeped through his jacket almost instantly. Hill motioned toward the back of the car. "Open the trunk." Marcus hesitated. "With all due respect, officer, you need a warrant for that." Hill smirked, the kind of smirk that sent a shiver down Marcus's spine. "You see, that's where you're wrong. I can check whatever I damn well please." Marcus stood his ground, his voice steady but firm. "Actually, no, you can't." But Hill wasn't listening. He marched to the back of the car, his keyring jangling as he prepared to force the trunk open. Marcus clenched his fists, feeling the weight of the moment pressing down on him. He knew what Hill was doing, pushing boundaries, testing limits, asserting power. It was a game Marcus had seen played too many times, but tonight he wasn't just another pawn. As the trunk popped open, Hill's smirk faltered. His eyes landed on a sleek black case tucked neatly in the corner, and for a moment curiosity replaced arrogance. He reached for it, ignoring Marcus's protests. "That's private property," Marcus said sharply, stepping closer. "You have no right—" But it was too late. Hill had already unlatched the case. The lid flipped open with a soft click, revealing its contents. Whatever confidence Hill had walked over with evaporated the moment his eyes fell on the papers inside. His face paled, his jaw tightening as he scanned the top sheet. "What the hell is this?" he muttered under his breath. Marcus crossed his arms, leaning casually against the car. "Something catch your eye, Officer Hill." Hill's hands trembled as he held the document closer, his eyes darting over the words. The bold header at the top read, "Notice of Termination." Beneath it, his name was printed clearly, followed by a list of offenses that made it impossible to look away. The rain continued to fall, soft and unrelenting, as the balance of power shifted in an instant. The rain drummed steadily against the roof of the car, its rhythm a stark contrast to the chaos brewing in Officer Hill's mind. He stood frozen by the open trunk, the termination notice in his trembling hands. His face, once a mask of confidence, was now a canvas of confusion and disbelief. The damp air seemed heavier now, pressing against his chest as if the very atmosphere had turned against him. Marcus, standing a few feet away, watched silently. His arms were crossed, his stance casual, but his eyes were sharp, calculating. He didn't rush to speak, didn't demand an explanation. He let the moment stretch, the weight of Hill's realization settling in. What is this?" Hill finally managed, his voice cracking slightly. He flipped through the pages in the sleek black case, each document more damning than the last. Complaints from citizens, internal memos from the department, transcripts of hearings, all meticulously detailed and organized. The case wasn't just a collection of accusations, it was a dossier of his entire career's misdeeds. Marcus took a step closer, his calm demeanor never wavering. "It's exactly what it looks like, Officer Hill. Your record. Every complaint, every abuse of power, every time you cross the line, neatly documented." Hill's head snapped up, his eyes narrowing. This is illegal. You can't have this. Who gave you this? Who the hell do you think you are?" Marcus met his gaze without flinching. "The question isn't who I am. The question is, Why is this all true? Why does this case exist in the first place? Hill's face flushed with anger, the veins in his neck standing out. He stepped forward, towering over Marcus. You think you can intimidate me with this crap? You think you're smart because you've got some papers. Marcus didn't back down. I think I'm smart enough to know when someone like you thinks they're above the law. But here's the thing, Officer Hill. No one is untouchable. For a moment, Hill's aggression faltered, replaced by something closer to fear. He looked back at the papers, his hands gripping them so tightly the edges crumpled. He flipped through the file again, his breathing growing heavier as he recognized the names of people who had filed complaints, the dates, the incidents he thought were long buried. This is, Hill began, but the words caught in his throat. He turned his attention to the black case itself, as if it might contain more secrets. His fingers brushed against a USB drive tucked into a small compartment. He pulled it out, holding it up. What's on this? Marcus raised an eyebrow, a small smile playing at the corner of his lips. Videos, audio recordings, all tied to the reports in those files. Hill stared at the USB as if it were a ticking time bomb. He looked back at Marcus, his jaw tightening. You think this is funny? You think you can play games with me? Marcus shook his head, his voice steady. This isn't a game. It's accountability, something you seem to have avoided your whole career. Hill's hands shook as he shoved the USB back into the case. His anger was mounting again, but now it was tinged with desperation. He slammed the lid shut and turned to Marcus, his voice low and threatening. You're messing with the wrong person. You have no idea who I know, what I can do. Marcus tilted his head, his expression thoughtful. I think I know exactly who you are, Officer Hill, and I think that's what scares you. Hill opened his mouth to reply, but his words were cut off by a soft beep. Both men turned their heads toward the car, where a small red light blinked on the dashboard. The camera. Hill's eyes widened as the realization hit him. Their entire interaction had been recorded from the moment he'd approached the car. You've been recording this, he barked, stepping toward the vehicle. His voice was laced with fury, but underneath it there was panic. Marcus leaned against the side of the car, his arms still crossed. Of course, people like you aren't exactly known for playing fair. Hill lunged toward the camera, his hand outstretched, but Marcus moved quickly, stepping between him and the car. Touch it, Marcus said, his voice calm but firm, and you'll add tampering with evidence to that long list of offenses. Hill froze, his hand hovering in the air. His chest heaved as he stared at Marcus, his eyes filled with a mix of rage and frustration. You think this little stunt is going to end me? You think you're some kind of hero? Marcus didn't flinch. I think it's time people saw who you really are. The tension hung in the air like a storm cloud, heavy and electric. Hill's fists clenched at his sides, his face contorted with fury. For a moment it seemed like he might lash out, but then he took a step back, his gaze darting around as if searching for a way out. What do you want? He demanded, his voice hoarse. Marcus straightened, his expression unreadable. I want justice, not just for me, but for everyone who's ever had to deal with someone like you. Hill let out a bitter laugh. Justice? That's a nice word for revenge. Marcus's eyes hardened. No, revenge is what you've been serving for years. This is accountability. The rain continued to fall, a steady rhythm that seemed to punctuate every word. Hill looked down at the black case. at the blinking red light on the camera, then back at Marcus. For the first time, the bravado in his eyes was gone, replaced by something far more human. Fear. "You're not going to get away with this," he said, but the conviction in his voice was faltering. Marcus stepped closer, his voice dropping to a whisper. "I already have." Hill stared at him, his chest rising and falling with quick, shallow breaths. The case, the documents, the USB, the camera. Every piece of evidence was a nail in the coffin of his career. And he knew it. Marcus turned and walked back toward the car, leaving Hill standing in the rain, clutching the crumpled papers like a man holding on to the last remnants of his power. As Marcus opened the driver's door, he glanced back over his shoulder. "This isn't over," Hill called after him, his voice shaking. Marcus climbed into the car, started the engine, and looked at Hill one last time. "No?" he said, his tone calm and certain. "It's just beginning." The car pulled away, leaving Hill alone in the downpour, the black case still sitting open in the trunk, its contents exposed to the relentless rain. The rhythmic tapping of the rain on the car's roof echoed through the silence, broken only by the soft growl of the idling engine. Marcus watched Officer Hill through the windshield, his fingers tapping lightly on the steering wheel as the police officer stood there, visibly shaken. Hill's eyes were glued to the trunk, his brow furrowed in confusion, anger, and something else, something closer to fear. Marcus knew that this was only the beginning. Hill's arrogance was now starting to crumble under the weight of the truth that had come tumbling out of that black case. The officer had taken the bait, and now Marcus had the upper hand. The blinking red light on his dashboard camera was a reminder that everything that had happened so far was recorded. Every word, every threat, every action. It wasn't just a confrontation anymore. It was evidence. Hill slammed the trunk shut, his fists tightening as he turned back towards Marcus. The officer's face was a mask of anger, his eyes wide, nostrils flaring as he stomped back to Marcus's driver's side window. He leaned down, his breath steaming up in the cold night air. He jabbed a finger at the camera on the dashboard, his voice rising. "Turn that damn thing off. Now." Marcus looked at him steadily, his expression neutral. He didn't move a muscle. "You heard me," Hill growled. "Turn it off." Marcus shook his head slightly, almost as if he pitied the man standing in the rain. "I think we both know that's not going to happen, Officer Hill." Hill's jaw clenched, the muscles tensing. He stared at Marcus as though trying to decide whether to rip the camera out by force or try a different tactic. Marcus could see it in his eyes, the fear of being caught, the desperation of a man who had always been able to use his authority as a shield, and now found it crumbling. After a long moment, Hill took a step back from the car, his head hanging low. He looked defeated, like a man who had just realized he was standing on the edge of a cliff with nowhere to go but down. Marcus kept his gaze steady, watching as Hill turned and walked back to his patrol car. He opened the door and climbed inside, his movements slow, as if every step was weighed down by the realization of what he had done. He shut the door behind him, and for a moment the only sound was the rain. Marcus looked at the live feed, his eyes scanning the comments. Messages of support, demands for justice, people calling for Officer Hill to be held accountable. He took a deep breath, feeling the tension in his chest begin to loosen. He had taken a risk, a huge risk, but now it was paying off. He picked up the phone, looking directly into the camera. "To everyone watching," he said, his voice steady, "this isn't just about me. This is about every person who has ever been stopped, questioned, or harassed because of who they are. This is about holding people accountable. No one is above the law, not even those who wear the badge. The comments continued to pour in, people thanking him, supporting him, sharing their own stories. Marcus ended the broadcast, the screen going dark as the rain continued to fall, the patter against the roof steady and relentless. He placed the phone back on the passenger seat, glancing at the blinking red light on the dashboard camera. He knew this wasn't over. Officer Hill would try to fight back, to find some way to retaliate. But Marcus also knew he wasn't alone. He had the truth. He had the evidence. And, most importantly, he had the support of people who were just as tired of the abuse as he was. Marcus took one last look at the patrol car in his rear-view mirror. Hill was still sitting there, his face barely visible through the rain-streaked window. Marcus could only imagine the thoughts running through the officer's mind, the realization of everything he had lost in just a few minutes. He put the car into drive and slowly pulled away, leaving Hill behind in the rain, his once intimidating figure now reduced to a shadow. The road ahead was dark, but Marcus felt a sense of clarity he hadn't felt in a long time. This was far from over, but it was a start. A small step toward justice, toward change, toward something better. And that was enough for tonight. The rain had turned from a drizzle to a steady downpour by the time Marcus reached the next block, but he wasn't going far. He turned into a small side street, his tires cutting through shallow puddles that splashed up in elegant arcs. His heart still pounded from the confrontation with Officer Hill, but there was no room for hesitation now. He knew that this was where everything began to change. Marcus parked his car under the partial cover of an overhanging tree and took a deep breath. His fingers still curled tightly around the steering wheel. His headlights cast two soft beams of light that illuminated the street ahead, showing only the blur of raindrops cascading through the air. For a moment, he let himself sit there in the silence, collecting his thoughts. The USB in the black case weighed heavily on his mind. He had spent weeks compiling the information, weeks of digging, researching, speaking to those who had been wronged by Hill. The complaints in the folder weren't just statistics or names, they were people's stories. People who had been humiliated, threatened, and mistreated by a man who thought he was above the law. And now it was Marcus's turn to make sure those stories were finally heard. Reaching over to the passenger seat, Marcus grabbed his phone. He navigated to his contact list and scrolled down until he found the name he was looking for. Rachel Martinez. She was an investigative journalist he had met during a protest rally a year earlier. She had a reputation for digging into stories no one else would touch, and for uncovering the truth no matter how deep it was buried. If there was anyone who could take this and make sure it saw the light of day, it was Rachel. The phone rang once, twice, and then clicked as Rachel picked up. Her voice was calm, almost soothing, despite the late hour. "Marcus, what's going on? It's pretty late." Marcus let out a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "Rachel, I need you. Tonight, I have everything we talked about." There was a moment of silence on the other end, and then her tone changed. Serious, focused. "You mean everything on Hill? You actually got it?" Marcus nodded, even though she couldn't see it. "I got it all, and I recorded our encounter tonight. It's all on video. Every word, every threat, everything." Rachel let out a low whistle. "Okay, where are you? I can be there in 20. I'm just off Main, near the old gas station. I'll text you my exact location." Marcus paused. "But listen, Rachel, it's not just about tonight. It's bigger than just one traffic stop. The evidence I have, it goes deeper. It implicates others. Hill isn't the only one." Rachel was quiet for a moment, processing his words. Then her voice returned, filled with determination. "I'm on my way. Stay put. And, Marcus, good job. You did it." Marcus hung up and leaned back in his seat. The adrenaline was still coursing through his veins, his body tense as he replayed the events of the night in his mind. He knew that Hill wasn't going to take this lying down. Men like Hill never did. They fought back, used their connections, twisted the system in their favor. But Marcus wasn't going to back down either. Not now. Not after everything. A knock on his window startled him out of his thoughts. Marcus turned, his heart pounding. But when he saw the familiar face outside, his tension eased. It was Rachel, her dark hair plastered to her forehead from the rain, her eyes sharp even in the dim light. He quickly unlocked the doors, and she slid into the passenger seat, shaking droplets of water off her jacket. "You weren't kidding about the rain," she said, giving him a half-smile. She pulled out a small notebook and a pen, her eyes flicking to the black case in the back seat. "Is that it?" Marcus nodded. "That's it. Everything we need." Rachel reached into the back, her fingers brushing the smooth surface of the case before she pulled it onto her lap. She looked at Marcus, her expression a mix of curiosity and admiration. "You really went through with it. I knew you had guts, but this is something else." Marcus gave a small shrug. "I'm tired of people like him. Tired of them thinking they can do whatever they want without facing any consequences." Rachel opened the case, her eyes scanning the documents inside. She pulled out a few pages, her eyebrows raising as she read through the complaints and testimonies. "You weren't kidding," she murmured. "This is damning." She looked up, her eyes meeting Marcus's. "You know they're going to come after you for this, right? Hill isn't going to take this lightly. His friends in the department aren't going to let this slide." Marcus met her gaze without hesitation. "I know, but I'm not alone. Not anymore. People need to see the truth." Rachel nodded slowly, then reached for her phone. She began to take pictures of the documents, her fingers moving quickly as she cataloged each page. Marcus watched her work, the rain still falling around them. The car's interior lit only by the dim glow of the dashboard. After a few minutes, Rachel looked up. "What's on the USB?" Marcus hesitated, then picked up the drive from the center console. "Footage. From body cams, security cameras. Audio recordings, too. Some of it is from officers who didn't want to come forward but wanted their stories heard." Rachel took the USB from him, her expression serious. "This is going to shake the department to its core, Marcus. You know that, right? If we go through with this, it's not just Hill. It's everyone who's protected him, everyone who's looked the other way." Marcus nodded, his voice steady. "That's exactly what I want." Rachel gave him a long look, then smiled. A real smile, one that reached her eyes. "All right then, let's get to work." The two sat in the car, the rain a constant backdrop as they began to go through the evidence, page by page, file by file. They spoke in low voices, their conversation punctuated by the rustle of paper and the soft clicks of Rachel's phone as she documented everything. Marcus could feel the weight of what they were doing, the enormity of it, but he didn't feel fear. For the first time in a long time, he felt hope. After what felt like hours, Rachel finally closed the case, her fingers lingering on the lid for a moment before she looked at Marcus. "We're going to publish this, all of it, but we need to be careful. Hill will find out sooner or later, and when he does, he'll come after you." Marcus gave her a determined nod. "Let him. I'm ready." Rachel smiled again, then opened the door, the rain immediately drenching her once more. She looked back at Marcus, her expression filled with determination. "Get some rest. Tomorrow we're blowing this wide open." Marcus watched as she walked back to her car, her figure disappearing into the darkness. He sat there for a moment longer, the weight of what was to come settling over him. He knew that tonight had been just the beginning. The real battle was yet to come. He turned the key in the ignition, the engine roaring to life. The road stretched out ahead of him, dark and wet, but Marcus no longer felt the uncertainty that had plagued him earlier. He had done what he needed to do, and now it was time for the world to see the truth. As he drove away, he couldn't help but feel a sense of purpose. Hill had used his power to silence people, to intimidate them into submission. But now, Hill's own actions were going to be his undoing, and Marcus was going to make sure of it. The rain continued to fall, a steady reminder of the cleansing that was about to take place. The storm that was going to wash away the lies, the corruption, and the abuse. It was time for a change, and Marcus was ready to be part of it. And as he drove through the empty streets, the black case in the back seat, Marcus felt something he hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. The next morning arrived with heavy clouds lingering in the sky, a sense of anticipation hanging in the air as though the storm had left behind its unease. Marcus had barely slept, his mind racing with the events from the previous night. The evidence was now in Rachel's hands, but he knew his role was far from over. Officer Hill wasn't someone who would simply fade away. Marcus knew that retaliation was almost certain, and the fight ahead was going to require everything he had. Marcus sat at his small kitchen table, a mug of steaming coffee between his hands. The news was on in the background, the voices of anchors reporting the mundane, everyday incidents of the city. But he wasn't listening. He kept checking his phone, half expecting a call from Rachel, or a sudden text warning him of what was coming. He knew they were treading dangerous ground. Bringing down someone like Hill wasn't just about exposing one officer. It was about exposing an entire system that had allowed people like him to thrive. A sharp knock on his front door pulled Marcus from his thoughts. He stood, the chair scraping against the floor as he pushed it back. His pulse quickened as he approached the door, a small sense of dread creeping up his spine. He paused for a moment, taking a deep breath before opening it. Standing in the doorway was a tall figure in uniform, but it wasn't Hill. It was someone Marcus recognized, an older officer with graying hair and a tired expression that spoke of years of seeing the worst the city had to offer. His name tag read Jackson. "Officer Jackson?" Marcus asked, his voice a mix of surprise and uncertainty. Jackson gave a small nod, his eyes scanning the hallway behind Marcus before he spoke. "Marcus, we need to talk. It's about last night." Marcus stepped aside, letting Jackson enter the small apartment. The officer moved with a kind of weary purpose, his eyes taking in the surroundings before settling on Marcus. Jackson didn't waste time with pleasantries. He turned to face Marcus, his expression grave. "Listen," he began, his voice low. "Word's already getting out. What you did last night with Hill, it's spreading through the department. And it's not just Hill who's worried. There are others, People higher up. They're not happy. Marcus swallowed, the weight of Jackson's words pressing down on him. He had expected this, but hearing it out loud made it feel more real, more immediate. "I figured as much," he replied, his voice steady. "But that doesn't mean I'm backing down." Jackson's gaze softened slightly, a flicker of something like respect crossing his features. "I know you're not, and that's why I'm here. There are a few of us, officers who've seen what's been happening, who know Hill and his kind are a cancer in the department. We want to help." Marcus blinked, taken aback. "Help? How?" Jackson glanced at the window, his voice barely above a whisper. "By making sure you stay safe, by getting the truth out before they have a chance to bury it." He paused, then added, "Hill's not just going to come after you legally. He's desperate, and desperate men do stupid things. We need to move fast." Marcus nodded slowly, his mind processing the implications. He had hoped there might be others in the department who wanted to see change, but he hadn't expected them to come to him. "Why now?" he asked. "Why not before?" Jackson sighed, a deep, tired sound. "Fear. Hill has friends, powerful ones. Most of us couldn't afford to stick our necks out, but what you did last night, you made it public. You took away his ability to silence you quietly. Now it's all or nothing." Marcus looked at Jackson, a sense of determination settling in his chest. "What do we need to do?" Jackson motioned for him to sit. "First, you need to come with me. We're meeting a couple of other officers, ones who've been gathering evidence of their own. We're going to compile everything and make sure it goes public in one fell swoop. No leaks, no half measures. We need this to be undeniable." Marcus stood, grabbing his jacket from the back of his chair. He felt a surge of hope mixed with anxiety. This was it, what he had been pushing for, fighting for. Real change, with people from the inside willing to stand up. He followed Jackson out of the apartment, his heart pounding in his chest. They drove in silence through the wet streets, the city still waking up under the heavy gray clouds. Jackson navigated through side roads, avoiding the main routes as if to prevent anyone from following them. Marcus couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, the paranoia creeping in with every turn. Eventually, they pulled up to an old, nondescript building, an unused community center, its paint peeling, the windows dusty. Jackson parked the car and turned to Marcus. "We're meeting them inside. This place is off the radar. No cameras, no patrols." Marcus nodded, following Jackson up the cracked concrete steps. Inside, the building smelled of mildew and old wood, the air cool and stale. Jackson led him down a narrow hallway and into a small room where two other officers were already waiting. They looked up as Marcus entered, their expressions a mix of apprehension and determination. "This is Marcus," Jackson said by way of introduction, "the one who got Hill on camera." One of the officers, a woman with short dark hair and sharp eyes, stepped forward, extending her hand. "I'm Officer Lewis. We've heard a lot about you." Marcus shook her hand, offering a small smile. "Good to meet you. I hope it's all been good." Lewis gave a wry smile. "Depends on who you ask." She gestured to the other officer, a younger man with a serious expression. "This is Officer Patel. He's been gathering information for months now. Complaints, reports that were buried, everything." Patel nodded, his eyes meeting Marcus's. "We've been waiting for something like this, someone from the outside to push things over the edge. You being a civilian means they can't just dismiss it as internal politics." Jackson motioned for everyone to sit around a small, battered table in the center of the room. He pulled out a thick folder, the papers inside frayed and yellowed at the edges. He spread them out on the table. Reports, complaints, photographs. Each one a piece of a puzzle that painted a damning picture of corruption, abuse, and cover-ups within the department. Marcus leaned over the table, his eyes scanning the documents. It was worse than he had imagined. Dozens of names, incidents that had been swept under the rug, victims whose voices had been silenced. He felt a surge of anger, his hands clenching into fists. Lewis spoke, her voice calm but filled with conviction. "We've been compiling this for years. We just needed the right moment to bring it all forward. And now, with the footage you have, we have a chance to do it." Patel added, "We can't give them time to prepare a defense. We need to hit them hard and fast. Take it public all at once so they can't twist the narrative." Marcus looked up at them, a sense of solidarity filling the room. "I have a journalist working on this too. She's ready to publish everything once we're ready." Jackson nodded. "Good. The more eyes on this, the better. We need to make sure they can't ignore it." For the next several hours they worked in silence, organizing the evidence, cross-referencing the complaints, ensuring every piece of information was verified. They documented each case, each report, every detail that pointed to the systemic abuse within the department. The room was filled with the rustle of papers, the soft murmur of voices, and the occasional click of a pen. As the day wore on, the tension in the room seemed to ease slightly, replaced by a growing sense of purpose. They were no longer just individuals fighting against a corrupt system. They were a team, united by a shared goal. They knew the risks, knew that what they were doing could end their careers or worse. But they also knew that it was worth it, that without action, nothing would change. By the time they finished, the table was covered in neatly organized stacks of documents, each one labeled and ready to be shared. Marcus looked at the other officers, a sense of gratitude washing over him. "Thank you," he said, his voice sincere. "I know what this means for you." Jackson shook his head. "Don't thank us yet. The hard part is still ahead, but we're in this together now." Lewis stood, stretching her arms above her head. "We should move. The longer we stay here, the more likely someone will notice." Patel gathered the folders, carefully placing them into a large bag. He looked at Marcus, his eyes serious. "We'll deliver these to your journalist. After that, we're all in. There's no turning back." Marcus nodded. "Rachel will know what to do. She's ready." As they left the building, Marcus felt a sense of determination he hadn't felt in a long time. The rain had stopped, the clouds beginning to break apart, letting thin rays of sunlight peek through. It felt like a sign, a small glimmer of hope in what had been a long, dark journey. They loaded the documents into Jackson's car, and Marcus watched as the officers drove away, their taillights disappearing down the empty street. He knew that the road ahead was still fraught with danger, that Hill and his allies wouldn't go down without a fight, but he also knew that he wasn't alone anymore. He had allies, people on the inside willing to stand up, to fight for what was right. Marcus took a deep breath, the cool air filling his lungs. This was it, the beginning of the end for Hill and everyone like him. The truth was finally coming to light, and there was no stopping it now. As Marcus walked back to his own car, the sun breaking through the clouds above, he felt a sense of calm settle over him. It was time for justice, time for the world to see the truth, and he was ready for whatever came next. The dawn of a new day carried an air of apprehension and hope. The sky above was a soft gray, the storm clouds dissipating slowly, giving way to scattered sunlight that fought to break through. Marcus sat in his apartment, staring out the window at the emerging blue sky. The past days had felt like a relentless storm in his life, but now there was a sense that perhaps the tides were finally turning. The small table in Marcus's kitchen was covered with the remnants of last night's work. Empty coffee mugs, scraps of notes, and his phone lying silently in the middle, the black screen reflecting the soft morning light. He felt exhausted, his body aching for sleep, but his mind refused to rest. There was too much at stake and too much to do. His phone suddenly buzzed, jolting Marcus from his thoughts. He picked it up, the screen showing a message from Rachel. "It's time. The story is going live in 10 minutes. Are you ready?" Marcus stared at the screen, his heart pounding. This was it. Everything they had worked for, everything they had put on the line was about to be released to the world. There was no turning back now. He typed a quick response. "I'm ready. Let's do this." He stood up, feeling the adrenaline start to surge through his body again. He needed to get out of the apartment, to be somewhere where he could breathe. He grabbed his jacket from the back of the chair and stepped out into the cool morning air, the streets still quiet with the early hour. The sun was finally breaking through, casting long shadows across the pavement as Marcus began to walk, his eyes scanning the familiar neighborhood. As he walked, Marcus couldn't help but think about everything that had led him here. The countless times he had been stopped by the police, questioned without cause, treated as if he didn't belong simply because of the color of his skin. He thought about all the people who had shared their stories with him, people who had experienced the same fear, the same injustice. Today wasn't just about him. It was about all of them. He reached a small park at the end of the street and found an empty bench, sitting down with a sigh. He pulled out his phone, refreshing the news page. The headline appeared at the top of the screen, bold and impossible to ignore. "Corruption in the police force exposed. Officer Hill and the systematic abuse of power." Rachel had done it. She had taken everything they had gathered, the complaints, the videos, the testimonies, and turned it into a story that no one could ignore. Marcus's eyes scanned the first few paragraphs, the words leaping off the screen. The article was blunt, direct, and filled with the voices of the people who had been silenced for too long. The evidence was all there, laid out for everyone to see. Marcus felt a swell of emotions rise in his chest, relief, anger, hope. It was all out in the open now. There was no way for Hill or his allies to hide from the truth. The comments section was already filling up, people reacting to the news, sharing their own stories, calling for accountability. Marcus could see the beginnings of something powerful, a wave of change that was building momentum. His phone buzzed again, a call coming in. He looked at the screen. "Rachel," he answered quickly, bringing the phone to his ear. "Rachel?" "Marcus, it's live," she said, her voice filled with a mix of excitement and urgency. "We're getting a massive response. People are already sharing it everywhere. We did it." Marcus closed his eyes for a moment, letting her words sink in. "We did," he said, his voice soft. "But this is just the beginning." Rachel's tone shifted slightly, more serious. "You're right. The department's going to be in damage control mode. Hill's going to be under intense scrutiny, but they're going to fight back. You need to be careful." Marcus nodded, even though she couldn't see him. "I know. I'm not letting my guard down. Are you okay?" There was a pause, and then Rachel spoke again, her voice filled with determination. "I'm fine. I'm ready for whatever comes next. We have people watching, making sure the story stays out there, that it doesn't get buried." Marcus smiled, a sense of camaraderie washing over him. "Thank you, Rachel, for everything." She laughed softly. "Don't thank me yet. We still have a long way to go. Stay safe, Marcus. I'll keep you updated." Marcus ended the call, placing the phone down beside him on the bench. He looked out across the park, the sun now fully breaking through the clouds, casting a golden glow over the grass and trees. There was a sense of calm in the air, a sense of something new beginning. He heard footsteps approaching and turned to see a familiar figure walking toward him, Officer Jackson. Marcus stood up, surprised. Jackson gave him a nod, his expression unreadable. "Morning, Marcus," Jackson said, stopping a few feet away. "I just wanted to check on you, make sure you're okay." Marcus nodded. "I'm fine. It's out there now. The world knows." Jackson sighed, a mix of relief and tension evident in his posture. "Yeah, they do. The department's already in chaos. There are people scrambling to figure out how to respond. Hill, he's not taking it well." Marcus raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" Jackson looked at him, his expression darkening. "Hill's furious. He's threatening legal action, saying the evidence was obtained illegally, that it's all fabricated. He's desperate, Marcus, and desperate men do dangerous things." Marcus felt a chill run down his spine, but he kept his voice steady. "Let him try. The truth is out there now. He can't silence it." Jackson gave a small nod, his eyes softening. "You're right. But still, watch your back. You did something big today, something that needed to be done. But people like Hill, they don't just go quietly." Marcus understood the warning in Jackson's words. He knew Hill wouldn't give up without a fight, but he also knew that he wasn't alone anymore. The story was out, people were watching, and the world was paying attention. Jackson reached out, placing a hand on Marcus's shoulder. "You did good, Marcus. You stood up when a lot of us couldn't, and because of that, things are finally starting to change." Marcus looked at Jackson, a sense of gratitude washing over him. "Thank you, Jackson, for standing with me, for believing in this." Jackson gave him a small smile, a hint of pride in his eyes. "It's not over yet, but we'll see this through, together." Marcus watched as Jackson turned and walked away, his figure disappearing down the path, the morning sun casting long shadows behind him. Marcus sat back down on the bench, his heart still pounding. But now there was something else, a sense of hope, of purpose. He picked up his phone again, scrolling through the comments on the article. People were demanding accountability, calling for Hill's resignation, for a full investigation into the department. The momentum was building, and Marcus knew that this was just the beginning. He leaned back, the sun warming his face, and allowed himself a moment of quiet. He thought of all the people who had been part of this journey, the victims who had shared their stories, the officers who had risked their careers to help, Rachel, Jackson. They had all played a part in bringing this moment to life. And it wasn't just about Officer Hill. It was about the system that had allowed him to thrive, the culture that had protected him. It was about changing the very foundation of how power was used and abused. Marcus knew it wouldn't be easy. There would be backlash, resistance, attempts to discredit everything they had done. But he also knew that the truth had power, and now that it was out, there was no going back. The world had seen what happened when power went unchecked. And now they were demanding change. Marcus smiled, a sense of calm washing over him as he watched the sun climb higher in the sky. Today was a new day, a day where the fight for justice continued, where the voices of the people would not be silenced. He stood up, slipping his phone into his pocket, and began to walk back toward his apartment. There was work to be done, battles still to be fought. But for the first time in a long time, Marcus felt a sense of hope that maybe, just maybe, things could be different. As he walked, the sun finally broke free from the last of the clouds, casting its warm light over the city. And Marcus knew that whatever came next, he was ready. If you liked this story, subscribe so you don't miss new videos. Share this video with your friends. Let's spread the truth together. And don't forget to check out our other stories. There's more to come.